What's up everyone, my name's PlatinumHowler, coach of your Coquitlam Red Gyarados, and today I'm bringing you my Week 2 match of the IBL against GREYVEEE and his Los Angeles Valienteis. You can see his team over on the right side of the screen. His two Z users are Noivern and Primarina. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment on the video down below. Your comments are always greatly appreciated and encouraged. Gray is one of the returning coaches from the D-League. We faced him in Week 4 of the season when we were both coming into that game with a 1-2 record, and I managed to pull out the victory in that game. And then after that, he went on quite the tear and made a nice run from 1-3 to reaching the semifinals of the D-League playoffs. So he is definitely a force to be reckoned with, and he, as well as us, comes into this game with a 1-0 record, so we'll be looking to hand him his first loss this week. Once again, we are going to start off here with my favorite member of the team, and that is Tentacruel. I love this thing so much. 4 passive kills in its first week against OG Albina. And we're bringing back the Toxic Spikes this week because for the second week in a row, I do not see a grounded poison type on my opponent's team, so I can get them up fairly easily and wear down certain things such as the Snorlax, the Primarina. Those are some going to be nice things to get some residual damage against. Now, unlike last week though, the Toxic Spikes are not the main win con. They're not what, like, I'm not trying to win the game by getting Toxic Spikes up and stalling the crap out of my opponent. They are just an option to get up if the opportunity presents itself, because I intend to use this as my initial switch into Infernape to scout out what kind of set it's going to be. I think it is going to be some form of some physical set, but it may also be mixed with Grass Knot for my Hippowdon, which is why I don't want Hippowdon to be the initial switch in. If he is a mixed set, then Tentacruel is a much better check to Infernape than Hippowdon. But if he's like a Scarf set, like fully physical, then Hippowdon will be able to check Infernape very nicely. So we have Poison Jab to hit things like the Primarina and the Shaman as well. And just hit his team relatively hard in general. I mean, not super hard because base 70 attack Tentacruel, but still, so we're going physical this week over special with Sludge Bomb or something like that, because the Primarina could very likely be Assault Vest, and in that case, Sludge Bomb or Sludge Wave is actually not two-hit KOing the Primarina. So by going physical this week with Poison Jab, we give ourselves a better chance of getting the 2-hit KO on that thing if we need it. So Knockoff is going to be able to get rid of the Eviolite on the Golbat, the Berry, 50% Berry, or whatever other item Snorlax is holding. And it will also hit the Rotom super effectively. I'm actually a little tiny bit afraid of Rotom against this team. I don't really have great switch-ins to it. It hits, its dual stabs hits 5 out of 6 mons on my team super effectively. So I can definitely see it being a nuisance to deal with. So having a move to hit it with on the Tentacruel, I think, is going to be valuable. And then the last move is going to be Haze to make sure that we are not set up fodder for the likes of mainly Snorlax, because I have an action plan against the Reuniclus, and that's basically when Reuniclus comes out, I switch hard into the Crawdon, so I can guarantee take any one hit that he might want to go for against me on the switch in with the Folk Sash. And I'll be able to either get an Endeavor off against something or click Knockoff and just get rid of the Reuniclus entirely. Now, there's a very good chance that he will be Colbur Berry, just as I presumed the Mew was last week against me, but Knockoff is still going to be doing a lot of damage to it regardless. So I don't intend to lead with this Crawdaunt, but if I do see the Excelgor in Team Preview, I may have to decide to lead with the Crawdaunt after all, because this is really the only thing that I feel comfortable leading against a potential Final Gambit Excelgor. My Hippowdon has a lot of HP and would be able to, you know, take it and slack off any damage just fine. But I don't really want Hippowdon in to take big damage from like Energy Ball, and I don't really want to let him set spikes up for free and stuff like that. So Crawdaunt will most likely have to lead if the Excelgor ends up coming. So hopefully it doesn't, because I'd like to use this thing as a Reuniclus switch in as best as I can. If I have to have this Crawdaunt's sash burned to the Excelgor, I may be able to use one other way to get Crawdaunt in for free without taking any damage against the Reuniclus, and we will see that coming forward. So next up we have the Hippowdon. So Hippowdon is obviously a very good check to his Sandcore, being Mega Tyranitar and Excadrill. But I actually built this team in a way that assumed that those two Mons were not a factor, because I really don't see him trying to win this game with Sand, because I don't think it has a good matchup against my team at all, mainly because I have very, very powerful priority in Aqua Jet Crawdaunt. I have such a good natural check in Hippowdon that's attacks actually get boosted by its Sand Force ability when Sand is active. And I also have a Celesteela, which just hard walls Excadrill. So I would be surprised to see Tyranitar and Excadrill come. I can maybe see Mega Tyranitar coming just to set rocks and, you know, maybe status something on my team, such as the Hippowdon. But I think that if he goes with that core, then his team is just overall going to be weaker against mine. So I say, even though I didn't really prep for those Mons, I naturally kind of have ways to deal with them, even without, like, dedicating like a ton of prep to beat them 1v1. So this is a pretty standard Hippowdon set, but I don't actually have Stealth Rocks on here. In fact, I don't have Stealth Rocks on this team. My only entry hazard is going to be the Toxic Spikes Tentacruel. I want Toxic to hit the Rotom, otherwise Earthquake Earthquake doesn't do anything to it because it's levitating. I want Reliable Recovery and Slack Off, and I want to be able to phase out Mons that are setting up against me, such as the Reuniclus and the Snorlax. So no Stealth Rocks this week, and hopefully that does not come back to bite us. So next up, we're going to have Choice Specs Swellow. This has just enough speed to outspeed his Noivern, which is actually kind of a threat to us. I don't really have great switch-ins to Noivern on this team. Nor do I have great ways of hitting it, but I do have this Spec Swellow, which can outspeed and nuke it if I get it in the right situation. So Gut Swellow on paper actually looks like quite a good set in this matchup, other than going up against the Rotom, because he would be immune to my normal type attacks, and he resists any flying type attacks, although he would still take a ton from like a Brave Bird or something. He would almost certainly be 2-hit KO'd by that. But the reason I decided to go Choice Specs Boomburst instead is because I feel like a Subseed Shaman is a very likely bring in this game. And if it can come in very, very easily against my Hippowdon, of all things, and Crawdaunt as well. So if he gets... I don't want to allow him to just Subseed stall me to death. So by having a Boomburst on Swellow, I can actually damage him through his Substitute. So if he goes for Substitute, like I can try to play around him, predicting him to go for Elite Seed or Substitute, get Swellow in, and then I can blow him back through his Substitute, or at the very least force him out into something like the Snorlax, which I can deal with in other ways. So next we're going to have Mega Gallade. This is a pretty standard coverage set of Mega Gallade. So I actually, I thought about having Swords Dance over Zen Headbutt on this Gallade, but I decided I should go with Zen Headbutt because I don't particularly care for getting walled out by Golbat. That's another mon that I don't really have fantastic ways of hitting, and a taunt like Taunt Roost Super Fang Brave Bird set is kind of annoying for me, so I want to make sure I have some more ways to hit that. Swords Dance would have been nice. Swords Dance knockoff to potentially break through the Reuniclus if I was having trouble taking that thing down, but instead I'm just gonna have to opt for the Jolly coverage set. Poison Jab is to hit like the Primarina, and it can also hit the Shaman without dropping my defense from close combat. Yeah, pretty basic Gallade set. I actually did not speed creep the Infernape. I am creeping. It's an aggressive speed creep because I know that Gray is very particular in his EV spreads, so I don't think that he will run max speed Infernape and catch me off guard like that. He likes to put EVs into all of his stats, kind of like my Gallade has here. So hopefully I will still be able to outspeed his Infernape with this amount of speed investment. And last but not least, we're going to have our Celesteela, which is going to be autotomized this week, but a very strange held item. And for those that don't know, Eject Button is actually my favorite held item to use in competitive battles because I really like some of the doors it opens. So the idea behind Eject Button is to use this as basically a one-time switch into the Noivern, so I can resist any Dragon type or Flying type attacks, and then I will get a free switch out into my Swellow, which can hit him for a lot of damage with the Boom Burst and such. And also, once Eject Button is burned, Acrobatics will be powered up, so that will be Acrobatics will hit the Shaman and the Infernape, and as well as Excelgor, but I mean, I don't think I don't need Acrobatics to kill that thing. I can just kill it with Heavy Slam, I would think. So yeah, this is going to be hopefully a late game sweeper. We're going to have certain things weakened, such as the Snorlax and Reuniclus to make this work, because the Reuniclus, if I don't have a Beast Boost, then Reuniclus can take hits from this thing relatively well. Like it'll still be doing like 40% if it's max defense Reuniclus, but yeah, a little bit of damage on that thing will be nice, so that Celesteela can just hopefully get it to autotomize up and run through the opposing team. So I think the speed investment on this is enough to outspeed. I want to say any Scarfers. It should, at +2, I should outspeed any Scarfers that are speed creeping Zeraora. That are going just fast enough to be faster than Zeraora. So yeah, that's gonna be the team, and hopefully we can get off to a 2-0 start. That would be our first ever 2-0 start in a YouTube league, and that would be a really nice feeling rather than just being 1-1 all the time. Being 500, I don't like being 500. I want to be one of the front runners in the IBL this season. So we'll see you right back with the battle. Here we are back with the battle, and looking at the team that Gray decided to bring, I pretty much nailed the team comp that I was expecting him to have. Not surprised whatsoever to see Excadrill left on the bench. I knew coming into this battle that he could not center his strategy around the sand. He did, however, bring the Tyranitar. This is likely just going to be a bulky set that can allow him to get up Stealth Rocks and chip down my team like that. Excelgor I'm glad not to see, because that means I don't have to worry about a potential Final Gambit lead set. Golbat also pretty nice not to see, because I didn't have the best ways of dealing with that thing. That could have been annoying for a lot of the bulkier things on my team. Noivern was also pretty difficult for me to switch into, so I'm glad not to see that. We do see the Rotom, which I was expecting to come, and that is his only potential hazard remover, so we'll have to scout out for that and see if we can get our Toxic Spikes up and keep them up for the entirety of the game, because Once again, every single mon on his team except for the Rotom will get poisoned by the Toxic Spikes. However, there is a good chance that the Reuniclus will be Magic Guard and won't be taking any poison damage anyway. Getting into the game now, I am going to go ahead and lead with my... And I'm going to be able to scout for any Scarfs that he may have because I would outspeed his entire team otherwise. And if not, I can just go for a U-turn and get the switch advantage against him. He's going to decide to lead with his Infernape, and thinking that there's a chance that this could be Scarfed and I don't want to take a potential Flare Blitz or a close combat, I'm going to pull the switch out into my Tentacruel so I can get my Toxic Spikes up, as he is actually going to switch out his Infernape into the Tyranitar, which was a pretty safe switch into anything that my Swellow might want to do. I think maybe he thought that he couldn't knock me out with Infernape, or maybe he was fearing a potential Scarf on my Swellow, although that is very uncommon in my opinion to see a Scarf Swellow. But anyways, he actually switches out his Tyranitar again into the Rotom, and is going to go for a Shadow Ball, predicting my Tentacruel to want to switch out, but I'm staying in and going for the knockoff, and I'm going to see that he was a Choice Scarfed Rotom. So now he's going to be able to switch up his moves, of course. He does actually outspeed me even without the Scarf, and he's going to be able to knock me out with the Volt Switch. But since I have seen that this Rotom is Scarfed, I'm thinking that the fact that he might have Defog is a lot less unlikely. So it's looking like there's a good chance that my Toxic Spikes will be up to stay for the entirety of the match. And I was also thinking that that he might be the likelihood of him being a Scarfed Infernape was also a lot less likely, although that was pretty dumb of me if you noticed what happened on the first turn of the game. But anyway, as this Shaman comes in, I'm going to bring in my Swellow, and knowing he's going to be forced out, I will go straight for the U-turn and get the switch advantage against him. I also know that this is the last turn of that Sand will be on the field, so I can drop in my Crawdaunt, and my Focus Sash will be preserved, as I can pressure this thing with a Liquidation. Excuse me. He's going to pull the switch out into the Primarina, which resists both of Crawdaunt's stabs, so a pretty safe play overall. And this Liquidation is not going to do all that much. So this definitely looks like a pretty defensively oriented Primarina. So now I'm going to pull the switch into my Celesteela to burn my eject button, as he is going to go for the Moonblast and does a decent chunk of damage as well. So my eject button is going to be burned, and I'm going to be able to get my Mega Gallade in for free. And he doesn't really have much at this point that he wants to switch into a Gallade. He might not be expecting me to have the Poison Jab. He might expect that the best move that I have to hit him is like a Zen Headbutt or something, and then he might be able to take it. But thankfully, Tentacruel doing its job from the grave once again, even though it's gone down early and I no longer have it available to switch it into the Primarina. It's still getting that 24% damage off against it with 2 rounds of Toxic Spikes. Really helps it, helps me put that Primarina into range for my Mega Gallade to knock it out with the Poison Jab. So now the Shaman comes in, and I'm going to decide to stay in, get some more damage off against him with the Poison Jab, as we see that he is a Rocky Helmet Shaman, and he goes for the Leech Seed to get a little bit of recovery. And on this turn, knowing that he wants to preserve his Shaman for my Hippowdon in the back, I am going to predict his switch into the Reuniclus and go straight for a knockoff. And of course he's going to get poisoned, but he is Magic Guard, so he is not going to be taking any damage from the poison. As we find out that he is Leftovers and not Colbleberry, so he takes a lot of damage from that knockoff, which is really nice. He's about at 50% now. I'm going to switch out my Gallade because he's going to be able to basically recover stall me at this point, because knockoff isn't, now that he doesn't have an item, it's not going to be doing enough to knock him out, and I'm going to be taking Leech Seed Chip as well. So my Crawdaunt now comes in, my Focus Sash still intact. I'm going to be able to go for a knockoff against the Reuniclus, get a lot of damage off against him. But because his item is already gone, it's not going to be enough to knock him out. As he connects Focus Blast against me, brings me down to my Sash. But at this point now, I can go for a liquidation to knock him out, knowing that he's going to make one of 3 plays. He's either going to leave his Reuniclus in to die, he's going to switch out into Tyranitar, predicting a knockoff to let the Sandstorm kill me, or he's going to go into the Shaman and let the Rocky Helmet damage kill my Crawdaunt. So just in case he went into the Shaman, I wanted to go for liquidation so that I did not knock out his Shaman, and I could bring in my Celesteela for free right here and click Autotomize. At this point, the Shaman is at way too low HP to be effective with the Leech Seed substitute set against my Celesteela, so I know that I can get my Autotomize up and he won't be able to stall me out with that set. So I get it up for free, and the Reuniclus is going to come in to be sacked off to the Heavy Slam. And I'm going to get my attack boost, and now Infernape is going to come in. If this is not Scarfed Infernape, the game is over. Celesteela gets 5 kills, but unfortunately he is going to be Scarfed Infernape, and I should have known that because on the very first turn, his Infernape switched out before my Swellow did. So I wasn't paying enough attention at that point in the game. That was a key piece of information that I overlooked. But that's okay though. The fact that he's a Scarfed Infernape means that my Hippowdon will be able to handle him much easier. I know that he has 1 play to make here, and that's switch out into the Rotom, so I'm going to get the Toxic off against him. And theoretically, at this point, Hippowdon should be able to solo the rest of his team. All I have to do is click Whirlwind so that Shaman comes in, gets poisoned, and dies to the poison damage. The only way that Shaman can do anything at this point in the game is if something on his side dies and he brings it in, for free to get an attack off. But I make a really dumb play right there and switch my Swellow in, expecting him to go for the Shadow Ball, and he actually predicts my switch and goes for a Thunderbolt to knock me out. So that's basically just costing me differential. I didn't really need Swellow to win the game, but it was just an unnecessary play for me to make. But anyway, now at this point, I have to preserve my Gallade because if I let my Gallade go down here, then when Shaman comes in for free on a free switch, then he knocks out my Hippowdon with the Seed Flare, and I can't let that happen. So I switch in the Hippowdon there to take the Flare Blitz, and I'm going to make another poor play by going for a Slack Off on this turn rather than just outright attacking him and going for the Earthquake, because I'm actually going to end this exchange with fewer HP than I would have had I just clicked Earthquake on this turn. With the extra Leftovers recovery, I would have been at 174 HP after that turn. As you know, because Tyranitar would have been knocked out here by the Earthquake. My Earthquake gets boosted by him setting his Sandstorm because my Hippowdon has the Sand Force ability. So he definitely would have gone down there. I would have been at 174 HP rather than 168 HP after this turn, and that could have potentially affected my chances of surviving a Grass Knot from his Infernape, which he does actually have on his Infernape set. But we're not going to see that come into play because he's going to switch in his Infernape here rather than his Shaman, and he's going to click Flare Blitz instead of Grass Knot. So of course I just go for Earthquake because as soon as this Infernape is knocked out, Gallade wins the game. Gallade is always going to be able to outspeed and knock out his Shaman. So I'm curious as to why he didn't click Grass Knot on that turn. Maybe he was predicting me to switch out into the Gallade just in case he had Grass Knot or something. But either way, Infernape goes down, so at this point all he has left is a Shaman at like 5% HP, so I'm going to be able to win this game, but I decide to leave my Hippowdon in, and it goes down to a Seed Flare, which was another play that I didn't need to make because there was no reason to let Hippowdon take that hit over my Gallade, because if Gallade eats that hit, then Shaman's going down to the poison regardless, and I win the game 2-0 instead of 1-0. But either way, we are going to get the win. GG to Gray. His links will be in the description, of course. but we have a lot to talk about with this game. Right from turn 1 of this game, I was not as focused as I could have been. I should have known that that was going to be a Scarfed Infernape after he switched out before my Swellow. Of course, my Swellow had enough speed investment to outspeed his Noivern guaranteed, so of course I would have outsped his Infernape there naturally. However, it didn't end up mattering too much because Hippowdon was matched up so well against his team at that point because a lot of his team was so weakened, especially the Shaman. Hippowdon matched up much better against a non-scarfed Infernape that has, you know, more coverage and maybe has a Life Orb. So if he was a Life Orb Infernape as opposed to the Scarf set that he had, then Celesteela would have cleaned the game at that point. 5 kills. Would have got a ton of beast boosts. However, if I had known that his Infernape was going to be Scarfed, and I could have played that differently if I had played my cards, correctly, I could have maybe walked away with that game with a 4-0 win, because I could have switched out my Celesteela there into my Hippowdon, knowing that he has to click Flare Blitz against my +2 speed Celesteela. And at that point, as I said, Hippowdon solos his team. The Rotom is not powerful enough to break through my Hippowdon. Once I get the Toxic off against that thing, all I have to do is stall him out with Slack off to 1v1 it. If I can click Whirlwind against anything, and if I Whirlwind him into the Shaman, it gets poisoned, it dies. He can't bring the Shaman in for free. He can't bring it in on a clean switch to get a C-Flare off against me before he goes down. And then at that point, I can just click Earthquake against his Tyranitar and Infernape to win the game with Hippowdon, and that could have been a 4-0. But even then, because I didn't see that his Infernape was Scarfed, I let my Celesteela go down. I still could have played the Hippowdon better to the point where I get a 3-0 win. There was no reason for me to switch out my Hippowdon into the Swellow, so that cost me, that changed to 3-0 into a 2-0, and then at the very end, I let Hippowdon go down for nothing. I could have just switched in the Gallade to see if it can survive the hit from Shaman, and that turns a 2-0 into a 1-0. So, while I'm still glad to get the win, and I'm happy to be 2-0 for the first time in my YouTube career, I mismanaged my differential and like really bad in this game, and I hope that doesn't come back to bite me in terms of playoff seedings and stuff like that. All of that being said, I am very happy with the way that I prepared for this game, knowing that he had to bring a certain team comp to have a chance at breaking through me. His team really looks very dependent on the Sand, and the Sand just had a horrible matchup against me. He can't really do much to Celesteela or Hippowdon, and I also have very powerful Aqua Jet priority with my Crawdaunt for him. So I do believe that prep won me this game because it certainly wasn't my play. If I had played as well as I had prepped, as I said, I could have potentially come away with this with a 4-0 instead of a 1-0. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel for more IBL uploads. Next week, week 3, we're going to be taking on Kohanks and his Reno Raikou. So we will see you next week for that battle. Also, don't forget to tune in on Friday for the finals of the PCL D-League. That is going to be up against... I will spoil my opponent at this point. You probably should have, you should know already. You had plenty of time to watch the videos. We're going to be going up against the Blazing Squid, who is a Draft League champion himself. So we're going to hopefully try to take down a former champion and crown a brand new champion. So make sure you don't miss that game on Friday. We'll see you for that one as well.